what do you say we talk to Steven in Florida?
Yeah, let's go. Let's talk to Steven.
All right. Steven, tell us what's on your mind.
Hey, good to talk to you again, Dr. Ben and Mr. Christy Powell. I've actually never seen you speak, but it's good to talk with you too, sir. My question is that, and I'm going to have to try to remember not to say any names, but I called into a atheist podcast, and it was more of a political topic. And one of the hosts, and I respect all of the hosts and their thoughts, and but I got labeled something that I wasn't, and for lack of a better word, demonized for not voting. My philosophy was choosing the lesser of two evils is still choosing evil, and the host was getting upset about that, and when she tried to say that it was basically wrong of me not to be able to vote, that I wasn't a very good person for not voting, for having that philosophy. I used the argument, that she was Canadian, and that she doesn't vote either. So the words that she was saying to me could be used against her. It upset her a lot. And the reason that I'm calling is because that call, sirs, ended with discouragement. It ended with me not really knowing. I was labeled wrong, and it made me wonder if I was that label. But I ended up calling back in with a different host, and the host opened my eyes to make me not only want to vote, but vote for marginalized groups that I previously didn't really share too much concern with, and it wasn't because it was a homophobic or a viewpoint. It's just that was not introduced to my life in any form or fashion. I mean, I guess some of my friends, and when people, explain it to you instead of labeling you and telling you, well, you're this because, I don't agree. I just wanted to bring that topic up and see kind of what you guys, think about this. I obviously.
Well, and just to be clear, the this is around the way people, atheist infighting and the way that we communicate with one another, or is the this around the question of should you vote?
No, this is more like how we speak to each other, because I think I should vote now, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like that I do have that opportunity to vote for these groups that deserve, human rights the same way anybody else does, that I've, just kind of left in the dark. Was like, well, that has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? So I didn't take that too serious, and now I want to. And so what I was saying is basically how we speak to each other. Because if you yell at somebody, you're causing them more confusion, especially if they don't know where they're at to begin with. And the second host, like I said, he not only convinced me that it was a wise idea to vote, but he also explained, not voting is not giving, what issues do you care about? Do you care about, women's rights and stuff like that, and so not voting is not giving that a voice. And so, it's basically picking it's basically choosing the most evil by not voting at all.
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely follow that line of reasoning. As far as how we talk about these things, I'm definitely not going to throw any hosts, anybody who's out here trying to do this work under the bus or be overly critical in the abstract. But what you're saying is certainly true, that if we are getting into a shouting match, that's likely not going to move the needle for anybody or convince anybody of anything. I will also recognize that there are some topics that ought to be yelled about. It may not influence anybody. And if we are saying that we are here to do this, to be participating in a educational nonprofit, then yeah, that's probably not a particularly valuable tactic for us to be leaning into. But it's pretty damn human to be upset about some of these like really meaningful issues. I think the only like true insight that I can really offer here, Stephen, is that I don't find any value in the concept of a good person or a bad person. I don't think that that has ever motivated anybody to become someone who is more willing to work towards their own betterment or the betterment of their community or society at large. It, to me, is so reminiscent of these notions of like right and wrong, good and evil that are very not just moralizing, but sort of wrapped up in a very rigid kind of religious type framework. And I would encourage people to look at specific actions or behaviors in terms of their healthfulness. You know, is what I'm doing, is what I'm saying making my life better? Is it harming other people? Is it making the world a better place on any level? Those are all very interesting questions to me. But is that a good person or a bad person, or does doing this make you into a good person or bad person? I could not care less. I don't think that's useful at all. How does that land for either of you?
I have kind of a different perspective
Sure.
on this, because like as somebody, I'm trans, and there are a lot of topics that are very hard to have conversations about, and there's definitely a time to have a calm, nice conversation, and there's a time to be angry and to be yelling at people. Do I think that we should be attacking like someone's character, like entire character based on a singular action? No, I don't think that's the case. And that's where I probably agree with you and Christy and say like, yeah, maybe we should categorize this as like, no, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but this thing that you are advocating for, the thing that you're talking about is, in my opinion, not a great thing. And like this action is not beneficial, or this action is harmful, or like this stance is harmful. That I think would be a better way to word those things, but especially with regarding topics that affect minorities, it's very, very frustrating to be a minority and to be screaming to the world, we need allyship, like we need people to step up, and like here's our perspective, here's what we need help with from our allies, and to have people keep saying, oh, well, that's not my problem. That says a message to us that even if you're not intending that message to be sent, that is the message that is being sent. And so it's very hard to, with that as well, be put on equal footing with positions that are in favor of our suffering. So when you have a nice, calm conversation, like, sure, is that more likely to, is it more likely that someone's going to change their viewpoint based on like years and years of calm discussion and, you know, having gentle like questions and back and forth and all this stuff? I love that. Like that stuff is great. However, sometimes when that happens, you're putting two very different ideas on equal footing and as equally credible and as equally legitimate. And I would say that that's problematic. Like if one person is advocating for, and I'm not saying that this is your position, this is just an example to clearly give the contrast. But if somebody had the position of wanting to commit genocide against a group of people, and then you had the other person like, you know, what if we thought about it this other way? Like, that's a thing like, hey, no, I need to put a hard line here and say, we are not on equal positions. This is not something we can agree to disagree. This is a problematic position, and I will be firm about that. Like, there are times and places where that needs to happen. And even though this particular example is seemingly minor, to a lot of minority people, like it feels like you're taking a more extreme stance. In that subtle communication that this issue isn't that important to you, that is communicated to us like this person is not wanting to help us out. And in a fight where we don't have, like when our voices are repeatedly silenced, that it feels like a lot bigger of an issue. So I'm glad that like different methods were able to help you there. And I'm not meaning to suggest that, and I also wasn't there for any of these conversations, but I do think probably a lot of people could have handled whatever conversation it was differently. But I do not think that it is inherently better or always better to have a calm, like, let's just walk you through this type conversation. So how does that sound for you?
Yes, sir. In regards to that, sir, that's honestly what I'm most ashamed of, is not caring enough, and that's what I'm trying to rectify as of this November. This issue has never been a concern to me, but I'm trying to rectify, not doing my part and not being an ally, like you said, and not voting the way that, I've really never voted at all, but, it was presented to me in a way where, not voting is more damaging to the marginalized communities that I say that I care about. So, that's what I'm trying to rectify the most.
Yeah. And again, like, I think that, there's a method that didn't work well for you and a method that did work well for you. And that just goes to highlight the need for diversity, not only in what we usually think of as diversity, but diversity of like personalities, diversity of like discussion tactics, etc. Because you could have a totally different discussion with different people and everyone would have a method that works better for them. Like, some people are more likely to change their mind with a very aggressive approach. Some people aren't. And I think it goes to show each one of us has kind of a different place that we fit within this whole realm of discussion. And certain people will have different boundaries of what's too much and what's not enough for them. And even Christy and I are going to have very, very different approaches on a lot of things. But I think, I think all of this is very good discussion.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we got there, right? And Stephen, what I mean by we got there is not that you decided to vote or decided who to vote for or anything quite like that, but rather that you started off with one sort of like line of moral reasoning, and then we examined it. And then we came to something that you now believe is more moral. And that is the process. Like, that is why Ben and I bother to show up and to do all of this. Yes, it's about separation of church and state. Yes, it is about the dissolution of like religious pressure in our daily lives. But it's really about how do we approach the world from a more like thoughtful and intentional and moral standpoint. And maybe can we get rid of some of the religious ridiculousness in this space by having these different sort of philosophical lines of reasoning? So I guess I really just appreciate you doing the work and then acknowledging what worked for you and what didn't and sharing your findings.
Yeah, thank you guys. Like I said, I've spoken to Dr. Ben before, and he's helped me on a couple different issues that I've had on, just like trying to figure out, my place. And this is one of the things that, just I'm most ashamed of is not being more supportive to people's rights and things like that. And so I plan to rectify that in November.
Sure. Well, we certainly appreciate you showing up. That is the biggest part of it here. And, to that notion of good people and bad people, I think we can look backwards and say that we've made mistakes, that we have done things that were not good, things that were bad. But that doesn't make us bad people. I'm all about the upside. I'm all about the next step. And I appreciate you making that change and for giving us a call today.